The air hung thick with the scent of expensive wine and the murmur of polite conversation. The Hawthorne Gallery, a converted warehouse in their old hometown of Oakhaven, pulsed with a vibrant energy. Susan, dressed in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves, felt a familiar thrill course through her as she scanned the crowd. It wasn't just the excitement of the art opening. It was the subtle hum of anticipation, the familiar flutter in her chest that always accompanied the possibility of seeing him. 15 years. 15 years since she'd last seen Mike Donovan, the boy who had stolen her first kiss under the ancient oak tree in their shared neighborhood. The boy who had held her hand through the tumultuous years of high school. The boy who had, in her memory, woven himself into the very fabric of her being. College had separated them. Distance and life's unpredictable currents had carried them away on divergent paths. Yet, here she was, standing amidst the artistic chaos, her heart pounding a rhythm that echoed the thrumming bass of the ambient music. Then, she saw him. Across the room, near a display of abstract sculptures, stood Mike. He was different, of course. The boyish charm was still there, but now etched with the lines of time and experience. His hair, once a tousled mess of dark curls, was neatly styled, framing a face that held a maturity she hadn't anticipated. He was taller, broader, his shoulders more defined, a subtle reflection of the life he'd lived away from Oakhaven. But his eyes, those deep, soulful brown eyes, held the same spark, the same hint of mischief that had captivated her all those years ago. A wave of emotion washed over her, a potent cocktail of joy, nostalgia, and a nervous tremor she hadn't felt since adolescence. He saw her then, his eyes widening in recognition, a slow smile spreading across his face. The crowd faded away, the music becoming a distant hum as they moved towards each other, their steps hesitant at first, then quickening as the years melted away. "Susan," he breathed, his voice a low rumble that resonated deep within her. "Mike," she whispered back, the name feeling both familiar and foreign, a word that carried the weight of a shared history, a life lived and lost. The embrace was tentative at first, a cautious exploration of a connection that had lain dormant for so long. But as their arms tightened around each other, the years fell away, replaced by the comfortable familiarity of shared memories, unspoken understanding. It was as if no time had passed, as if they had only just parted moments before. They moved to a quieter corner of the gallery, the vibrant energy of the opening fading into the background as they fell into easy conversation. They spoke of their lives, their accomplishments, their disappointments, their journeys far from Oakhaven. Susan spoke of her career as a successful architect, the challenges and the triumphs, the sense of accomplishment that filled her days. Mike, a renowned photographer, described his travels, the diverse cultures he'd encountered, the stories captured in his lens. Then, amidst the comfortable flow of reminiscence, a shared memory surfaced a seemingly insignificant detail, yet a powerful touchstone to their childhood. They both recalled a peculiar, almost forgotten detail about Mrs. Gable's garden, the way she had arranged her prize-winning dahlias, a specific color combination that neither of them could explain but both vividly remembered. The casual sharing of this memory, a detail so specific and so profoundly shared, created a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The comfortable familiarity that had enveloped them began to give way to an undercurrent of unease, a prickling sensation of something not quite right, something subtly amiss. The conversation faltered, their eyes meeting and holding in a silent acknowledgement of this shared, unsettling memory. The gallery, once a vibrant, bustling space, now felt different, almost oppressive, its vibrant hues suddenly seeming harsh and out of place. The music faded into the background, the noise of the crowd muted, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The quiet that settled between them was thick with unspoken questions, a silent recognition that this chance encounter held a deeper significance, a potential revelation that threatened to unravel the comfortable tapestry of their reunion. The joy of seeing each other again, the bittersweet nostalgia of remembering their teenage romance, now paled against a growing sense of disquiet, a shared intuition that their paths had crossed for more than just a simple, fortunate coincidence. The weight of this unspoken truth hung heavy in the air, a silent promise of revelations to come. The shared memory of Mrs. Gable's dahlias, so seemingly insignificant, was the first crack in the carefully constructed facade of their reunion. It was a whisper of a truth, yet to be fully revealed, a premonition of a reality that would shatter their idealized memories and redefine the very fabric of their identities. The vibrant energy of the art gallery could not mask the silent tension that now permeated their encounter, foreshadowing the seismic shift that was about to rock their worlds. The comfortable familiarity of their reunion had dissolved, replaced by an unsettling premonition of a life-altering discovery waiting just around the corner. The night had begun as a celebration of a chance encounter. It was quickly morphing into something much, much more profound. The wine, a crisp Sauvignon Blanc, felt strangely bitter in Susan's mouth. The comfortable buzz of their conversation, the easy flow of shared memories, had dissipated, replaced by a heavy silence punctuated only by the clinking of their glasses. The unspoken truth, the unsettling premonition that had begun to take root earlier, now blossomed into a full-blown anxiety. Mike, sensing her unease, leaned forward, his gaze intense. "It's strange, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "That memory, Mrs. Gable's dahlias. It's like we've shared a life beyond what we remember." Susan nodded, unable to articulate the swirling emotions within her. The shared memory felt less like a nostalgic touchstone, and more like a cryptic clue, a riddle hinting at a hidden truth. The feeling of unease, once a subtle undercurrent, had intensified, becoming a palpable tension that filled the space between them. A mischievous glint flickered in Mike's eyes. "It's almost as if..." He paused, his voice laced with a blend of jest and something far more serious, "as if we were brothers and sisters." The words hung in the air, a shocking proposition that transformed their quiet unease into a gaping chasm of disbelief. Susan stared at him, her mind reeling. The idea, absurd as it initially seemed, resonated with the unsettling feeling that had been gnawing at her all evening. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, though the words lacked their usual confidence. The laughter felt forced, a thin veil over the rapidly growing unease within her. The seed of doubt, planted by the shared memory of Mrs. Gable's dahlias, had taken root, growing into a disturbing possibility. I know," Mike said, his gaze softening. "It's a crazy thought. But what if we weren't so far-fetched? What if we weren't just random people reunited by chance?" He paused, watching her reaction intently. The playful tone of his earlier suggestion had completely vanished, replaced by a serious intent that sent chills down Susan's spine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "There's this DNA testing kit I've been meaning to try. It's just a bit of fun, right? A crazy, what-if kind of thing." He offered a weak smile, his eyes pleading with her to agree. The casual way he suggested it, the almost flippant nature of the proposition, made the suggestion all the more unsettling. The absurdity of it struck Susan first. The idea of them being siblings was preposterous, a fantastical notion born out of a shared, oddly specific memory. Yet, the unease that had haunted her since their reunion refused to be ignored. A strange mixture of fear and morbid curiosity spurred her on. "Okay," she whispered, the word barely audible above the quiet hum of the gallery's background music. "Let's do it." The following days were a blur of anticipation and dread. The DNA test kit arrived, a small, unassuming package containing a stark reminder of the life-altering potential of this impulsive decision. The process itself was simple, almost mundane. A cheek swab, a small tube, a prepaid envelope. Yet, the act of submitting those samples felt monumental, a surrendering to fate. a relinquishing of control over their carefully constructed reality. The wait was agonizing, each passing day stretching into an eternity of suspense. The mundane aspects of their lives' work, friends, the quiet routines that had defined their existence before this reunion seemed to fade into the background, dwarfed by the looming possibility that the very foundation of their identities would be irrevocably altered. Then, the email arrived. Mike's minimalist apartment, a stark contrast to the warm, inviting atmosphere of Susan's home, felt cold and impersonal. The clean lines, the lack of clutter, mirrored the starkness of the revelation about to unfold. He'd chosen to reveal the results here, in the sterile environment that felt fitting for the seismic shift about to occur in their lives. Susan sat on the edge of the minimalist sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The email, printed and resting on the coffee table between them, seemed to radiate an ominous energy. The simple, stark black font held the weight of a lifetime's worth of assumptions, now poised to be shattered. Mike's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the printout. His eyes darted toward Susan's, a mixture of fear and anticipation reflected in their depths. He cleared his throat, then began to read, his voice hushed and hesitant. A 99.99% probability of full sibling relationship. The words hung in the air, an unspoken sentence that concluded their reunion and redefined their lives. The air thickened, the silence amplified by the hum of the refrigerator, a stark reminder of the mundane reality contrasting sharply with the life-altering revelation. Susan's breath hitched. Her carefully constructed world, the life she'd built since her separation from Mike, crumbled around her. The familiar comfort of their shared history, initially so comforting, now felt tainted, distorted, utterly redefined. The image of Mike, her childhood sweetheart, her first love, warped into something else entirely. A brother. Her mind reeled. Images flashed before her eyes. Their stolen kisses under the oak tree, their whispered secrets in the dark, the countless moments of shared intimacy. Now, each memory was tainted, irrevocably altered, imbued with a disturbing layer of incestuous undertones. Mike, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock, mirrored her own internal turmoil. His carefully constructed self-image, the life he'd built independently of Susan, now lay in ruins. The casual suggestion of a DNA test, a lighthearted impulse, had unleashed a maelstrom of emotions that threatened to engulf them both. The silence stretched, punctuated only by Susan's ragged breathing and the faint hum of the refrigerator. The casual setting, the minimalist apartment, became a stark symbol of the profound, devastating change that had altered the course of their lives. The comfortable familiarity of their reunion had been replaced by a horrifying reality, a shared history that could never be erased, a truth that would forever alter their perceptions of themselves and each other. The bond they shared, once a source of joy and nostalgia, was now burdened by a heavy weight of biological connection, a biological reality that cast a long, dark shadow over their lives. The unexpected reunion had culminated in a devastating revelation, leaving them grappling with the implications of a shared heritage that transcended love and redefined their very identities. The future, once brimming with possibilities, now felt uncertain, fraught with the unspoken questions and challenges that lay ahead. The casual suggestion of a DNA test had changed everything. The drive to her mother's house felt longer than it should have, each mile stretching into an eternity of dread. Susan's carefully rehearsed speech, the measured tone she'd practiced in the mirror, evaporated as she pulled into the familiar driveway. Her mother's quaint, flower-filled cottage, usually a haven of warmth and comfort, now seemed to loom, a symbol of the painful confrontation to come. She found her mother in the garden, tending to her prize-winning roses, her back to Susan. The scent of roses and damp earth filled the air, a poignant contrast to the bitter taste of the truth Susan was about to reveal. Her mother, Eleanor, turned, her face creased with the familiar lines of worry and age, her eyes, usually sparkling with warmth, clouded with a weariness that tugged at Susan's heart. Susan's throat tightened. The words, so easy to formulate in the privacy of her own apartment, now seemed to stick in her throat, each syllable a heavy weight. She began, her voice trembling slightly. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you." Eleanor straightened, a hint of apprehension clouding her expression. "What is it, darling? You look upset." Susan took a deep breath, the scent of roses doing little to calm her racing heart. She produced the printed email, her hand trembling as she handed it to her mother. Eleanor's eyes widened as she read the stark black font, the clinical language of the DNA test results. Her face paled, her lips parting slightly as comprehension dawned. Silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves. Eleanor's hand shook as she lowered the paper, her gaze falling to Kaya. The roses, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the ashen pallor of her face. This can't be right," she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes filling with tears. "There must be a mistake." Susan, her heart aching with a mixture of guilt and empathy, knelt beside her mother, taking her hand. "There's no mistake, Mom. Mike and I were siblings." The words hung in the air, shattering the idyllic tranquility of the garden. Eleanor's shoulders slumped, her body shaking with suppressed sobs. The years of carefully constructed composure, the mask of strength she'd worn for so long, crumbled, revealing a woman overwhelmed by grief and regret. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face, hot and unrestrained. "Oh, Susan," she cried, her voice choked with emotion. I never meant for this to happen. I was so young, so alone. I didn't know the floodgates opened, releasing a torrent of pent-up emotions." Eleanor recounted her story. A tale of youthful naivete, of desperate longing for a child, of a hasty decision made in a moment of vulnerability. She spoke of the shame and guilt she'd carried for years, the fear of discovery that had haunted her, the secret she'd guarded fiercely. The idyllic image of Eleanor, the strong, independent woman Susan had always admired, was replaced by a vulnerable, heartbroken mother, a victim of circumstance and youthful desperation. The afternoon stretched into evening, the shadows lengthening across the garden as Eleanor poured out her heart. Susan listened, her initial anger and bewilderment giving way to compassion and understanding. The revelation was devastating, a cruel twist of fate that had irrevocably altered their lives. But it was also a story of human fallibility, a tale of love and regret, of choices made and consequences endured. The drive to Mike's mother's apartment was a stark contrast. The sterile, modern high-rise building, a world away from her mother's cozy cottage, reflected the detached, almost clinical atmosphere that prevailed within. Mike's mother, a renowned lawyer named Caroline, answered the door with the same cool composure she displayed in court. Her tailored suit and meticulously styled hair seemed to shield her from any emotional disturbance, a formidable defense against the turmoil brewing within. Susan handed Caroline the email, her heart pounding against her ribs. Caroline's face remained impassive as she read, her gaze steady, betraying nothing of the emotions that surely churned beneath the surface. When she finished, she simply folded the paper neatly and placed it on the side table, her expression a mask of controlled composure. "I see," she said, her voice calm, even, devoid of any emotion. The lack of reaction was more unsettling than any outburst. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant hum of city traffic. Susan waited for an explanation, for a reaction, for anything to break through the icy facade of composure. But there was nothing. Finally, Caroline spoke, her voice still devoid of emotion. "This explains certain things," she said, her gaze distant, almost preoccupied. "Certain similarities." She offered no further explanation, no apologies, no expressions of regret. Her response was a clinical observation, stripped of any emotional resonance. The stark difference between her reaction and Eleanor's was striking, highlighting the varied ways individuals cope with trauma and unexpected truths. Caroline's silence, her controlled composure, spoke volumes about her personality, her ability to compartmentalize, to maintain a cool detachment in the face of life-altering revelations. The evening was spent in a detached, almost sterile atmosphere. The silence a stark contrast to the emotional torrent Susan had experienced at her mother's house. The contrast between the two mothers, their vastly different reactions to the same shattering truth, served as a poignant illustration of the complex tapestry of human emotions and the varied ways in which individuals process trauma and overwhelming revelations. The unexpected reunion had opened a Pandora's box of secrets, exposing the hidden vulnerabilities and strengths of not just Susan and Mike, but their mothers as well. The journey ahead promised to be challenging, a labyrinthine path fraught with ethical dilemmas and emotional complexities. The revelation had shattered their worlds, but it had also laid bare the underlying truths that would shape their future, forcing them to confront not only their shared biology, but the enduring legacy of their families and the choices made by those who came before them.